Sawadee krap. Hello guys. Welcome to Internal Moot 2024 recording clips. My name is Poom Wanakam, the Vice President of Thammasat International Moot Society of this year's committee. I would like to first express a sincere appreciation for the three ex-mooters who will be helping us with this recording, help explain all the things. So we have P-Wish08 third year LLB, we have PP Man 08 third year LLB, and of course P on knee 08 third year LLB. These three ex-mooters are arguably the best at what they do. They have passed through numerous moot court competition, and they will be sharing with all of us today their experiences and their tips and tricks on how to be able to do your best basically in this internal moot problem. Once again, my name is Poom, LB08. Let's start off with something that we shall talk about briefly, which are just a few 5 things. These are a table of contents. So first thing, we're just going to be talking about what really is moot court in basic definitions, more specific into what is internal moot, basically what you guys are competing as of now. How does it work? What is the structure of it? And of course, we cannot talk about internal moot without referring to Asia Cup moot, because some of you guys might heard around your friends that, oh, if you're ranked in internal moot, you are eligible or you're able to compete in Asia Cup. So we're also going to talk about what really is Asia Cup. If you guys are looking to really just further your mooting career, we might also look at some options that might be available to you, which are international moots. They will have around 4 moots that is available and should be suitable for everyone who is looking forward to furthering their moot court career and potentially push themselves academically. And last but certainly not least, we have the values. What do you basically get from joining moot court as a whole? What are the benefits? And why you should even bother in the first place joining moot court. Those are the few things that I'm going to go over quite briefly. What really is moot court with our introduction here? This is the photo. It was from the Harvard Ames moot court competition, arguably one of the best moot court competition in the world right now. It's very, very intense, and moot court could get that intense, but it really just depends on the type of moot that you choose. Harvard Law School, arguably one of the best law school in the planet, really just defines moot court as involves all basic skills that a lawyer shall have. Includes memo writing, conducting research, having a holistic perspective, etc., etc. I'm going to be summarizing it based on this definition that moot court is what allows you to really simulate yourself being a lawyer, being a litigator, talking in front of a judge. But not only that, drafting documents, drafting memorandum that you will be sending to the courts that presents your arguments on why this guy is right and why that guy is wrong, or why this guy shouldn't be liable, why that guy shouldn't be liable, or why this guy can tax and why that guy cannot tax, etc., etc. So it really just helps you hone your skills that you want to really have if you want to thrive in the career of law. Moot court is definitely an experience that all of you, all the law students, should at least experience once in their lifetime in their law school. And even if you do not want to be a litigator or a lawyer in disputes, all of these skills, drafting, writing, public speaking, is really just compulsory for all occupations. And let's move on to things that you will be generally doing in moot court. First thing is, of course, research. You'll be conducting a lot of legal research because the problem will be given to you based on the facts that are some of the time quite long. So you need to be able to read the facts properly and you research it. There is a specific way to ensure that your research is the most effective, in which our ex-movers will also touch on that a little bit. Overall, research, very important components of moot court competition. You need to be able to come up with a good research to form a good arguments, which is the second thing that you normally do in moot court is that you draft arguments, um, or in this case, you draft a memo in which the memo includes your arguments. Those arguments is based on your research. So if you notice, these three things are linked to each other. One of them cannot lack at all if you want to really do the best you can in this competition, in this internal moot. So apart from drafting an argument in the memo, in which of course our ex-mooters will go over as well, you have the last thing, which could be intimidating to some people, but it really is not, since it really just it's not that intense in terms of internal mood that we're talking about. You just need to be able to get your point across in a well-mannered and a constructive way, and that is in the pleading process, where you'll be in front of the judge and you'll be talking to them about why your arguments based on the memo or additional research works, and why they should judge according to your arguments, and why your side should win, basically. So next thing is what really is internal moot. We have discussed moot court. It's, simulating being a lawyer who talks in front of a judge, as well as some pre-process leading up to that pleading. But what is internal moot? So internal moot is basically a one type of moot court competition, which is highly encouraged for beginners. And the reason is that because first, it only allows people who haven't done moot before to participate. It's not a team competition. Some of you guys might think, oh, that's really intimidating. It's gonna be overwhelming, but it's not that difficult. You're gonna be under the guidance of a coach. You're gonna be competing alone. You'll be able to do things at your own time, at your own pace. And during your competition, the top four ranked individuals will be formed into a team and will be able to compete at the Asia Cup moot competition, in which we'll be go over shortly after this, as well as an opportunity to compete at cross moot with Chulalongkorn University, which is held annually. So very, very encouraged for beginners, people who really have zero background in moot court, to join this internal moot. It's a great start, and it has built so many successful lawyers and mooters based on this competition alone. Internal moot will allow you to really just develop two main things, or at least get access to two main things. First is that you'll be able to tap in your hidden skills, things you really didn't know you might have. For my instance, I have competed in IHL, and right now I'm doing tax mode right now. I haven't really known much about my writing skills. I would just think it's average, but after competing in moot court, I have realized that it can be improved, and it should be able to improve if I just practice and put the time on it. You guys will be able to develop valuable skills: speaking, writing, researching, all the three things you need to be a good lawyer. Apart from skills, you'll be having the opportunity to travel overseas, as Asia Cup moot competition is usually held in Tokyo, Japan. So for all you guys who is hoping that they'll be able to travel overseas for some academic competition, this is the perfect opportunity for you guys. So be sure to really just do your best on it and don't stress out, um, as there will be coaches that will be willing to help you. Let's go more in depth about Asia Cup Moot. As I said earlier, it's usually taking place in Tokyo, Japan. Qualification, pretty much you need to participate in internal moot as an individual, of course. The top four ranked individuals will be eligible to go to Asia Cup moot competition. It promotes the creation of future lawyers in Asia, with main focuses on rule of law. Rule of law basically means in Thai is Lak Niti Tham. So that's the main focus of the moot court competition. So the aim of the competition is to, of course, to create future lawyers that will be able to really excel in the occupations of law and potentially become a good person with a sense of justice. So now we're going to be talking about some other international moods that you'll be able to join as well after you have done competing in internal mood, or you want to try some other new mood court competition as well. Right now, the four mood court that TIMS focus on, these four mood court competition, they are IHL Moot, Jessup, we have Moot, and of course we have Moot, and I'm also currently a part of the team this year. Let's first start off with some basic info about each moot court and who should be suitable for each moot court competition. So I would say that, in my personal opinion, if you did not compete in internal moot, I would say the first moot that you should get into is probably going to be IHL moot court, since the contents, the dimensions, as well as the scope of its arguments is quite narrow. Usually deals with international humanitarian law, which really just works with the elements of the crime. People who is really keen on studying more about criminal law, international justice, or international humanitarian law, or political warfares in general, is very suitable to compete in this competition. Along with internal moot, it's very good for beginners or people who are new to moot court as well. I also start off with this moot court. I went to Hong Kong just earlier this year. I would say one of the best experiences of my life. The facts are very interesting. It involves two states fighting against each other pretty much and committing atrocious war crimes. And we have to argue whether it does uh, constitutes a war crime or not. If you are not the criminal law type of person, you're really just an international law person who really just focus on the interactions and relationships between states and obligations between them. I would say Jessup Moot is very, very suitable for you if you do like public international law. Although disclaimer is that this moot is arguably one of the toughest moots for you to join. I would say chess up is going to be a very difficult starting point since one, it is quite competitive. Two, it's very fact heavy, very informative, and three, it requires you to really just research an extensive amount of information concerning not only public international law but also other areas as well, such as politics. So apart from Jessup, you could go for Fismoot. This is for people who are really just into arbitrations. Arbitrations are basically a way in which you can resolve a dispute in an alternative way apart from going to court. Basically like a private trial. You just appoint an arbitrator and then you let them adjudicate the case in which the award, as they call it in arbitration, the arbitral awards will be final and binding between the parties. There are a lot of benefits to this, but there's also a lot of risk and detriments to arbitration as well, in which you'll be able to explore more in this moot court competition. I would say that is good for second-time mooters, although I would still say if you want to start, it's better to start with IHL and internal moot, as this moot, especially in terms of international commercial arbitration, could be quite tricky. But there are a lot of my friends who did get into it without prior backgrounds with arbitration. So I would say that if you want to go for it, you can go for it, but do expect some things that are really just unconventional and might take some more time to learn. But I would say with a good team and guidance, you should probably get through it. Now, last but certainly not least, tax moot. People who likes tax, international taxation, tax theory, tax policies, this is what you are looking for. Not a really good idea to start off with. I would say I recommend this more to second-time mooters. For me personally, I already did IHL moot court, so I would probably go with tax moot next. So I did. Right now, I'm a part of the team, and I would say that it is not easy, but also not difficult. The thing is, it really takes a lot of time, at least for me, to grasp the concepts, probably because I don't have an income tax or international tax background. But I would say people who don't really enroll in courses about taxes could still compete in this. So I would say if you like tax, be sure to check it out. This year, at least in my case, the fact was quite horrendous. It is very fact heavy, involves a lot of fact interpretation, analysis, but also awareness of the relevant tax law and tax treaties, and a lot of team discussion as well. So, personally, for me, very difficult to form an articulate arguments based on tax mood. IHL mood, I would say a very good starting point. Jessup, if you're second time, third time mooters, that will probably be better. And this moot, if you like arbitration, you cannot miss this moot. Let's go to the values that these moots, all these competition have similar values. They include friendship, the ability to create memories, right? That's one of the best things you can get from moot court. Teamwork, you'll be having the chance to network with a lot of professors, students from overseas, different legal backgrounds, which is very informative, surprisingly. And skills development. This is a no-brainer, as I mentioned earlier so many times. It allows you to develop a wide range of skills: writing, speaking, consulting, advocating, discussing, uh, forming arguments. All of these things are important if you want to be a lawyer, and also important if you want to get into business as well, as it helps with public speaking, uh, really just convincing people why your stance is important and should be acknowledged. I would argue that is important for all occupations as well. I would say moot court is probably one of the best experiences you can have in your law school years. So I would really encourage all of you to not only join Internal Moot if you guys are with us in this competition, but also just expand your options, explore your options. Look at Viz Moot, Tax Moot if you're into those subjects, or if you want to go to a different level, challenge yourself. Let's go for Jessup. That's the end of my part. After this, it's gonna be Pewish who's gonna be guiding all of you guys through the facts of the case, where you guys will be getting to fun stuff, and our ex-mooters, PP Man and Peony will also be helping you guys go through this moot problem and develop your moot skills as well. Now, disclaimer, guys. Although this is a recording clip which offers some amount of info that will be able to help you guys, I still highly encourage you guys to join the workshop, as that is a place where we'll be going through an even deeper information and analysis on the facts of the case, and a more personalized guidance to you, where you'll be able to learn even more apart from this clip. But that will be it for my part, guys. I appreciate you guys listening to my part, and I'm gonna pass the mic to P-Wish after this. Thank you, guys. See you.
My name is Myowish Limpanukon or Piwishนะครับ, and welcome everyone here to the moot court internal moot selection process here. So firstly, I'm going to break down the fact for you guys, but just only the part necessary for these mock programs. So as we can see here, this is the statement of the agreed fact, which normally would be a part of the moot problem, which the real moot problem will be much more longer than this. And we can see that the very basic part will be here in paragraph 1 and paragraph 2. We have Anatania and Ranpisha, and you have to identify which side you are. In this case, Anatania is the applicant, and Ranpisha is considered the respondent. So if we can see paragraph 1 and paragraph 2 here is like just only the specific details of each country. And then if we can look from paragraph 3 to paragraph 13, it's all about the conflict, the details, and so on, in which you should have to read it on your own. The real conflict here arises in paragraph 14 นะครับ Paragraph 14 mentioned about the tribunal of the first instance of Ria Ostania. So for Ria Ostania, because I did not get through all of the fact in detail, I will tell you that Ria Ostania is the part of Ran Pichai. We can see that the conflict here is the tribunal of the first instance of the Ria Ostania has delivered the decision upholding the recognition of the foreign judgment, and at the same time, they haven't been delivered a judgment denying the jurisdiction immunity here. So this is the part of the dispute. And what is in detail? What is relevant to the conflict in this case? What is about the jurisdiction? We can look in paragraph 24 to paragraph 26. Paragraph 24. On 4 July, Pact of Bogota ceased to be enforced with respect to Ranpisha, which is the claim from Ranpisha that, oh, Pact of Bogota now already ceased to be enforced. And paragraph 25 is about the decree law, and 26 about the Supreme Court of Ranpisha have resumed the proceeding, which will link in detail to the authors. But technically, if we look further, I will give you the part of paragraph 28 and 29, which is the prayer of relief. Prayer of relief will state the part that you have to argue for. So we can see that Anatania have their own stance, and also One Pisha has their own stand as well. So in fact, the dispute in this case is all about whether or not the Pact of Bogota here ceases to be in effect. And here we can mention about specific term in paragraph 29A, which is relevant to that, which is jurisdiction rationale temporalis. This term is not just only normal jurisdiction, but it means jurisdiction relevant to the treaty, which in this case, treaty is the Pact of Bogota. So to break down the fact in summary, it is just the dispute of the jurisdiction over the case where your main focus is on whether or not the Pact of Bogota here ceases to be in effect. If the Pact of Bogota ceases to be in effect, then the case will be rendered in favor of the first side. At the same time, if the Pact of Bogota is not yet ceased to be in effect, then the case will be rendered otherwise. It's like just only the Pact of Bogota is relevant to the issue whether or not there's jurisdiction.
สวัสดีครับ My name is Pirwadli Khalsung นะครับ So I'm one of the coaches for this year's Internal Moot. A little bit of a history, I guess. I did Internal Moot, I think around when I was year 1 on 2022. So it's last year's one, right? And I learned a lot from it, but I think one of the most important things that you're going to struggle with if you have no background to this before, or if you do not know how to do it, is going to be about writing the memorial. Now, in this tutorial video, I am going to basically only be giving a sneak peek of 1, what is a memorial, 2, what are the contents inside of such memorial, and 3, I'll give you a little bit of a formatting advice, right? So firstly, what is a memorial? I'll be using my internal moot during my year. I'll be using my internal moot memorial นะครับ to show you guys this นะครับ memo basically. Memorial is something that you submit. It is a compilation of legal arguments and essentially facts combined with the legal arguments and the authorities to essentially make a written submission. So it's a written memorial. In these types of memorials, you will usually include the table of contents, summary of pleadings, and the pleadings themselves. This is the most basic format of memorial, and this is what you will be expected to do. Bear in mind that not every moot court is the same. For example,นะครับ, if you would like to continue to do jessup, there will be something called the index of authorities and the summary of facts and also the summary of pleadings. We do not have that here. Secondly, other moot courts will have a completely different format, but generally what is constant in all of them is the table of contents, the summary of pleadings, and the pleadings. So that's why I put it here. In internal moot, the case will be about a submission to the International Court of Justice นะครับ ศาลยุติธรรมโลกนะครับ ก็ ICJ. And usually, a memorial will look something like this นะครับ At the top right, you write your team name, or you write, basically what team you are, what competition you're going to, the case, your clients, basically, and the respondents in the case of the memorial for the applicant, or vice versa, and the location, and of course the ICJ logo. I will be teaching you how to do this at the end of the video. Now moving on to the actual important stuff. So this is one of my first memorials, so the quality might not be as good, but I think it serves as a very good starting point. So firstly, you would like to do a table of contents, right? The table of contents is basically the section where all of your arguments, all of your submissions are easily labeled with the page number so that readers, first-time readers, can easily find your arguments. One thing to note about PDF ones is that you can click these things and there's sort of like a hyperlink to these small sections. I will be teaching you how to do that in the real workshop นะครับ So yeah. Or if you didn't attend the workshop, of course, if I was your coach, I'll be teaching you how to do it. Next is going to be about the summary of pleadings. The summary of pleadings is generally done last because it is only after you finish your main pleadings, that you are going to be starting with the summary pleadings, because the summary pleadings is basically well, as its namesake, a summary of the things that you wrote, right? Of the things that you are going to do. So in this case, you could see that I wrote, Rosalia violated international law by suspending the Eternal Zephyr and therefore needs to allow the Eternal Zephyr to resume its operation and pay full compensation. So that's what I did during my year. And then we basically just write all that, write the summary of the pleadings and no need for citations. Finally, and the absolute most important part of the memorial is your pleadings themselves. So the pleadings is going to be your legal submission. Now, with regards to how to write a memorial, there are many styles. For us, we choose to basically do a informal IRAC style. IRAC. However, other countries and other nations could favor different styles. I recommend all of you guys to go and check, the different styles of memorials. They usually submit the best memorials, and you can go and check how they work like, and then to see why they got the best memorial. But the thing that they usually check, of course, is your legal arguments, the sources to back them up, so the legal authorities, the tone, the formatting, and basically everything. The way that you know the formatting and the tone can be found in the rules. If the rules are silent on such issue, generally, you can do whatever you want. However, if the rules specify that a memorial must be conducted in a certain way, then you follow the rules. For example, in this case, the rule was that my pleadings cannot exceed 10 pages. So I used 10 pages. And the citations are done in footnotes. So you could see are done in footnotes right here. Right there, footnotes. And usually the way that we structure our pleadings is going to be the main pleadings and the supporting arguments, and of course the sub-arguments of such issue. So in this case, you can see that my example, the state of Rosalia, violated international law by suspending the Eternal Zephyr and therefore needs to allow the Eternal Zephyr to resume its operation and pay full compensation for the loss. So split the issue. It's sort of like law school. You split the issue. There's 3 things that needs to be proven, right? Firstly, the state of Rosalia violated international law. That's the first burden of proof. The second burden of proof is they need to allow the Eternal Zephyr to resume its operations. And finally, pay full compensation. So this is how you should structure it, right? So you're splitting the issues so that the reader does not get confused. If you write all of this down in a single thing, everyone's going to get confused. There you go, you see? Rosalia violated international law by suspending the Eternal Zephyr, and there's the burden of proof there. And firstly, Rosalia has an obligation to allow the Eternal Zephyr to resume operations, and Rosalia must pay compensation to Microcosmos, Earth, Wind, and Solar, which is the company that was allegedly violated in this case. And with the written memorials, you can notice that firstly, I wrote the general facts, and then I wrote the law, right? So it's sort of like IRAC. But it's a little bit different from IRAC, where you outline the issues first. In this case, when you're writing a memorial, you're writing it on behalf of your client, essentially. So you would like to assume right away that the other side is wrong. So the way to do it is sort of like a CRAC, right? Conclusion, rules, application, and conclusion again. So you notice that instead of writing the issue, which is whether or not Rosalia violated international law, I wrote that, oh, Rosalia violated international law. That is essentially something like that. And then I go on and explain. The way to cite is usually going to be done on the format of Scholar, but different competitions have different citation rules. So I would recommend you read the rules of each competition before you do so. In the case of Internal Moot, however, Oscola is preferred. Citing everything is very, very important because you would like the person reading this for the first time to be able to refer to what do you mean. So that is essentially the way to write the memorial, which I will be explaining further in our workshop. After our memorial is written, then you can basically end it all with the praise for relief. So we're asking the court to adjudge and declare that their state of Rizal is eternally responsible for economic losses, and accordingly shall allow Eternal Zephyr to resume operation, pay full compensation for the losses. Right. So that is the memorial part. Now I'm going to be giving you a sneak peek of what the workshop is going to be about. My part generally concerns the formatting issue. So obviously when you start working on the memorial, it's going to be a blank slate. So what do? Well, essentially, you start making your title page first, your cover page, right? So we can look at our memorial and go on from there. So firstly, we start with the team. Let's say that I am team 1. Your teams will be given to you later. After that is going to be the competition. What is this memorial for? So we use the middle mouse button here to center it. So it really depends on how you're going to structure it. You can structure it full caps, memorial for Internal Moot 2023 to 2024, right? So that would be your year, and then bold it, Control B. You don't have to do this. For example, you can also just do it like this. It is a formatting and it is a style issue, but generally the moot court competitions allow you to get a lot of freedoms when it comes to it. So you could do it in small caps, so it looks capitalized, but it's really not capitalized. You could just not capitalize it at all, but I do not recommend it as it does not look good, but it's just style. So in this case, we're going to be going for the small caps. Let's say, no preference, it's just my preference. And then we're just going to be drawing lines. So lines, you go to shapes, you go to lines, and just draw it across right here. First, select the style, make it bold and nice, and then you put it on. The lines are a little bit messed up, but that's okay, because you put the spacings between them properly, like this. You click paragraph, and you see the spacing right here? Make it the same size. And now, see, it's in the middle. You just need to adjust it so that both of these lines are also in the middle. There you go. So now you have the basic lines. You do not need the lines per se, but I am used to it like this. So, just make it so that it is, there are spaces between it, basically. Here you go. And let's get some space here. There you go. So that would be the first part. You don't need to include these lines, by the way. And the second part is what? Well, it's to write down the case, right? But you do not have to do it like that. So let's show another way to do it, right? Another way to do it is to just basically put the ICJ Memorial's logo right here. So now we have the ICJ logo right here because this is the case to the ICJ logo. And it's a little bit barren up there. So let's just put the location here in the International Court of Justice at the Peace Palace. Let's make it so that don't have to add space right here. In the International Court of Justice at the Peace Palace, The Hague, Netherlands. Let's make this a little smaller. And of course, our clients. So this year's case concerns about the alleged violations of immunities from jurisdiction between the Federal Republic of Anatania and Kingdom of Ranpicha. So let's write our cases here. And let's make this like this. Right. So I'm using small caps this time because I think it looks nice. You don't have to do small caps for all of it, by the way. That's just my style. If you don't think it looks nice, then you could just do another style. It doesn't really make any difference, actually. It's just like whatever you think looks nice. After that, of course, is going to be the parties to the case. So the parties to this case is going to be concerning Anatania and Ranpicha, right? So the parties is going to be the Federal Republic of Anatania as the appellant, or more example, the applicant actually, and Kingdom of Ranpicha as the respondent. And finally, we do a memorial for the claimant. There you go. All right. Just making this a little nicer. minus that. And then we put at the top right, team 1. And let's put that in there. Some space. Center it. Okay. Now it's messed up, so we fix it. And there you go. I see. Oh, sorry. That is basically for the line. And then we try to make it as equal as possible. But in this case, I made a little mistake, which is fine. Okay, there you go. 12, 0. There you go. Now it's in the middle. So same thing here, down here actually. Sometimes you could just copy and paste the thing. So this time we're going to be writing who our client is. Memorial for the applicant. Nakrap. All right. So this is essentially what a cover page of a case like this should look like. But you will notice that it doesn't really matter how you format it as long as it is formatted. Nakrap. So for example, right here, I can push it down a little bit, right that. But what is needed in the cover page is, first of all, your team. Second of all, what internal moot this is. Of course, the locations and the formalities and all that. But the cases and also your client's name. It's a little bit nicer. Versus who the respondent is. All right. Let's make this all capital, actually. 2 of this. Okay. So essentially, this is how you do the cover page. Now, I hope it's not that hard, but this is basically the most basic way to do a cover page, and it's not that difficult per se, I would say. But in the real thing, of course, you're going to be expected to do all of it. So the cover page, table of contents, summary of pleadings, and the pleadings. Of course, stay tuned for the workshop session, or if I could have the honor of being your coach, I will teach you how to do that as well. And if you guys have any questions with regards to it, feel free to reach out, feel free to ask TIMS, and they'll definitely refer to me, and I'll be answering the questions myself, hopefully, if they let me. And I genuinely hope to see you guys in the upcoming Internal Moot Workshop. I think that they will include a lot more aspects. Like, for example, in the Internal Moot case, I will also be teaching you how to do the table of contents. You want to know how to click it like this? I'll teach you then. I'll also teach you how to do citations, teaching you how to do formatting, how to use all of that stuff, how to make page numbers appear, and all that. So, without any further ado, I hopefully you have learned something from the time that I've taken from you today, and I wish you guys the best of luck. And I genuinely hope to see you all in the internal mood workshop. All right.
Hello guys, my name is Panithaphon Donsakul, or you can call me Peony. For my part, I will talk about the understand your stance and purpose from the mood problem. As you can see from Pewit's slide, that the stand is very essential in terms of doing the mood. And I personally believe that when you understand correctly about your stance, you can get the good score and you can answer the question from the judge. Most of the time, judges would like to ask you about the stance and how you analyze or how you interpret your stance, and how you understand the stance from your side very well or not, or you might be confused something, or you confuse some stance. It might be reduce your score. For my part, I will divide into two sub part. For the first part is understanding the stance in the memorial, which is very essential, and the second one is understand the stance in your pleading. For the first part is very essential. You have to understand first the meaning of the stance. When you're trying to understand the stance, I believe that the easiest way you have to put yourself in such situation. For example, if you are claimant, you have to put yourself in such situation, whether or not the claimant desires something, or whether or not the claimant would like to do something, or to ask something, or to request something. You have to put yourself as the claimant. In other words, if you are the respondent, you have to understand that you have to counteract for the thing that the claimant asks. Basically, you have to put yourself as a respondent. You believe that you are not wrong. You do something right. So you have to believe that in each action that you do, it is right. If you are a respondent, you have to believe in such way. For example, in this presentation, you will see that Mr. A loves Thai traditional food. However, Mr. B disagree with Mr. A. Since he is more into Western food, therefore, Mr. A and Mr. B have different stance on this matter. In this example, you will see that the main point or the main part is that whether or not these two persons have a different opinion about one thing is the food. So basically, you have to find out or figure out what point that two parties have the controversy on such part. In this example, you will see that the controversial part is about the food. The first one, love or desire about Thai food, but the other one would like to go about Western food. You will see that these two persons have different opinions and they are controversial on this part. Similarly, when you read the mood problem, you have to find or figure out which part or which matter that two parties have controversial on such part. And for about the understanding stance in the memorial, from my experience when I'm doing the IHL mood court, I would say that in the memorial, we have to identify the stance. For example, if you are the claimant, you have to identify what things or what requests that you would like the judges to do for you. For example, if you believe in the internal moot court, if you believe that this case is subject to the jurisdiction of this court, you have to identify that you believe that you have right to ask the court to judge on this matter in this court. This called jurisdiction, or ภาษาไทย called เขตอำนาจศาล. And you will see that if you are respondent in the case or in the mood problem, you also have to identify your stand as well. But remember that if you are respondent, you have to counteract something that the claimant requests the court. For example, if the claimant asks the court that this case is subject to this court, the respondent have to identify to the court that this case is not subject to this court. This is very easiest way to understand the stance and identify your stance when you are both claimant or respondent. You have to clearly identify it. I would say that there are some highlighted words that I would like to mention. You have to point out the stance because the stance is something to give you a score. If you would like to get best score or if you would like to get high score, you have to often put your stance in your memorial and also put your stance in your pleading as well. You have to identify to judges that you understand your stance and you believe this way. You believe that it's right. You believe that this should be something. For example, in internal moot court, if you believe that this case subject to this court, you have to point out which paragraph or which legal rule that provide you about the right of this jurisdiction. Because normally there are rules or maybe there are some legal rule that you can identify or you can point out in your memorial and lead to the judges that this back up your point, this back up your belief, something like that. And another thing is very essential is that do not miss your position or do not miss your stance. Mostly this situation happen when you are pleading to the judges. It's very common that sometimes if you are in a situation that if judges ask you about the stance you have to remember all the time that you represent which side. For example, if you represent claimant, do not miss your purpose. You come here for what request, for what command, or maybe you will have something that you would like the judges to do for you. So you have to remember this, and this is for all. This is some example from the IHL moot court, which I have experienced. So I would like to catch something, recommend something for you to develop more in the internal moot court. I believe that in internal moot court is very challenging. I would say that it's not hard, but you have to understand quite well. For example, in this case, I would say that the bold part is a part of the fact that you can read from the mood problem, and then you identify which paragraph and which sentence that you could lead to your stance. For example, in this case, you will see that President Gaba gave Diallo order troops from the 1st Commando Battalion to cross the border by stealth through the Momayo National Park and infiltrate the quiet village of Dunante near the border. There were two objectives. You will see that in this fact is very clear, I would say, is very clear. The fact provide some terms or some word called objective. You will see that objective or purposes are very essential when you do the mood. In this example, you will see that President Gaba have two objectives. First, to secure the oil and to peacefully contain the villagers in their house until the Kisakan oil miners were able to begin drilling for oil the next day. You will see that in this case, President Gaba will attempt to provide the fact that they do this because they have the reasons, they have the purposes. However, if you are the claimant or you are the plaintiff, you have to find that these two objectives are reasonable or not. So basically, you have to find this paragraph and find or figure out the point that two parties have controversial. For example, in the case of internal moot court, as you can see from the moot problem fact that the main point about the jurisdiction, right? Basically, you have to find which paragraph that identify your stance, whether you are the claimant or whether you are respondent. You also have to identify your stance. Okay, so the tricks to understand your stance. Most of the time, I would say that I recommend you all to read the fact as much as possible and then try to order or rearrange the order of the fact, because sometimes it might take a time if you do not understand the fact quite well. So I would say first read as much as possible, not only the fact but also the law, the legal rule as well. And another part is very essential. I would say the research part. I would say that research is very essential because sometimes you might see some word or some term that you might not familiar with or you did not know before. So you have to research. For example, if you do not know about the law, or maybe in this internal moot court, if you do not know about any treaty or any international law, so you have to research and try to use the database as much as possible. Personally, from my experiences, when I do like IHL, I use the ICRC database very, very much. And I would say that if you can find the database is very beneficial for you. So I would recommend you to use database as much as possible to find the cases to support and also to find the authority as well. Meanwhile, you have to understand your stance while you're doing the research as well. So this is another part, or like the second part of my presentation, understanding the stance in the memorial. I would say that when you do the memorial, you have to find the main argument that two parties have controversial and then try to dissect into the paragraph. And this part is very essential because apart from the stance in the memorial, you also have to understand the sense during the pleading as well. I would recommend three things. First, you have to listen carefully during the judges ask you. For example, if judges would like to know about the legal rule, you have to listen carefully which type of question that judges ask you. Like Pewitt said that there will be three types of question. First, question about the fact. It's normally the judge will taste you about the fact, but the judge might not take so much time to talk about the fact, I would say, because judges will know that you read the fact carefully. So judges will not pay attention much about the question that asks you about the fact. However, you have to bear in mind that this type of question is very essential. If you lose the point from the question of the fact, then I would say it's not good for you. So you have to carefully read the fact and answer to the judges about this question carefully. And the second type of question is about the question of the law or question of the legal rule. I would say this part is very hard, and sometimes mooters are not familiar with the question that judges ask you. But bear in mind that you have to stick with the law. Do not confuse the law to benefit your side. Stick with the law and try to provide like your interpretation instead. And for the last part, which is the part that I would like to highlight it, this part is the stance question. Stance questions are really challenging. From my experience, judges would like to know that you understand stance well or not. You understand that you come here for what purposes, or you just only talk and read, remember and read, remember and read. No, judges would like to know the deeper understanding of your side. So basically, you must remember all the time that if the judges ask you about question of the stance, something that do you believe that this situation could be blah blah blah, something like that, test you on the stance. So you have to answer them, you believe or not. And most of the time, you have to back up by your stance. For example, if you are the claimant, you have to stick with your purposes. And then you can answer the judges quite well. Second trick, try to note your stance when you are doing the plea. I would say that normally when you plead in front of the judges, you will have the paper, right? You will have the script or maybe the paper or maybe the memory or something like that. And you will have one pen or maybe one pencil. And then you can put or note something essential for you to answer the judges. And one of that is the stance. Note something that, okay, right now we are represent the claimant. We request this, and we believe this, something like that, to help you or to assist you when the judge asks you. The last part, make sure you answer correct stance. When you answer the judges, you have to make sure, or maybe if you do not sure, so I would recommend you ask the court or request the court to have more minutes or more time to conclude the judges' questions first, and then look to your stance and answer back to judges. So this is all for my part about the stance. You might wonder why I chose stand, right? Because from my experience from two mood competitions, from both IHL Moot Court and also IP Moot Court, I would say the stands are really essential. Honestly, apart from the memory, apart from the fact, apart from the legal rule, the stands are really essential. Most people are not pay attention much about the stands. I have another example that is very like interesting. This is my real mood problem when I'm compete in the IP mood court competition 2023. In this mood problem, the facts are not too long. It might be take 3 or 4 pages to read the fact and then read the question at the end of the mood problem. As Pewish said that the first part, for example, the first paragraph, the second paragraph until maybe 13 paragraph, right, for the internal mood problem. Those are the facts that you have to read correctly and read quite well. But if you see the last part of the mood problem, always the question, and always contain some controversial part that you have to pay attention. Sometimes, if you do not have so many times, you can just read the question first and then go back to the fact. This is my trick. However, I will recommend you to read every paragraph correctly. For example, from this IP mood court, you would say that this is the end of the mood problem in the page number 5. They provide us for 3 counts, A count, B count, and C count. For example, for A count, they ask us that did Chef Mark violate the trade secret right by using Pat Wu Wam receipt without the consent of Chef Palm, who is the owner of the trade secret? You are not like you are not quite familiar with trade secret, right? However, it's not any issue here because I do not expect you to understand all the legal rule here. However, I would like to show you like how to establish your stance. In this case, you would say that the question asks you, did Chef Mark violate trade secret of Chef Palm right? Did Chef Mark violate Chef Palm right? This is the short version from this long question. If you are the plaintiff or you are claimant, you have to establish your stance in this way. Chef Mark violate Chef Palm trade secret right. It's very easy, right? If you understand the fact and you understand the question, you can establish or identify your stance. However, if I'm represent the respondent or the defendant here, I will establish the count as Chef Mark does not violate the trade secret of Chef Palm. Something like that. It's very easy, when you're familiar with the mood problem, it's very easy. You can establish the stance a few minutes. It's not take too long for you to establish the count or to establish your stance. It just simply read the fact and understand which side you represent for and which side your request for. Something like that. It's very easy, believe me. For example, if you represent the claimant, you have to believe from your heart and believe from your thought that you are the claimant. I will not recommend you to just only remember the script and talk to the judges. No, it's not the good version. So you have to understand the thing, understand the situation, and try to put yourself into such a situation. If you are someone who is attacked from the war, something like that, from the war crime, what would you do? Something like that. You have to put yourself in such a situation and try to make your familiar with the situation. Or sometimes if you believe that this case is subject to this court jurisdiction, you have to put yourself into such situation and see how the treaty or maybe the legal rule can benefit you about the prescription, about the jurisdiction for you. Yeah, so this is my recommendation for this part, and I hope you are doing well for this internal mood court. I really appreciate you all to participate in this mood, and hope you get well and see you soon.
This part is about how to do an effective pleading, which here is relevant to the internal mood problem, the some part that already been break down for you. So maybe we will start from the first one here. Oral pleading will have quite a lot of part, starting from the main pleading here. Main pleading is quite a format. Normally, when you get into the main pleading, there's always like a format of what you have to mention here. So I have give you two examples here. It's like Mr. Madam President or Mr. Madam Chief Justice. This depends on whether in that court you call the judge Your Excellencies or Your Honors. For example, if you compete in the moot court relevant to Thai court, normally the opening will be like Mr. or Madam Chief Justice, Your Honors, and May it please the court, because you call the judge Your Honors. But for this case, in the national mood, we normally call the judge Your Excellency. So maybe when it's come to the part of the format, it will be like Mr. President, Your Excellencies, and May it please the court. And after that, you continue briefly introduce about yourself, which side you are in, for which minutes. It depends on whether the court require you to mention about that. You'll be speak of what issue. And your co-counsel, what is her name or what is his name, will address which issue for how many minutes, and how many minutes that you reserve for rebuttal and rebuttal. For example, like Mr. President, Your Excellencies, and May it please the court. My name is Novish Limpanugon, and I am on behalf of the claimant. And for the next 5 minutes, I will be addressing the first issue regarding what issues, and so on. Then my co-counsel, for example, Pantraporn Donskun, will be addressed the issue of the second issue or the third issue for another how many minutes. And finally, you reserve how many minutes for rebuttal and conclusion, also rebuttal and conclusion if you are the defendant, or in this case, it's the respondent. Now, when it comes to the main pleading, the difference between the legal writing and the oral pleading is like this. When you do the legal essay, you normally do the IRAC structure. You have issue, rule, analysis, and conclusion. But when you do the oral pleading, when you write down the script, it is not IRAC. It is the first conclusion first. You state the stance in your conclusion. Then you analyze and then conclude again. So maybe we can look in the next slide. In the main pleading, I will give you like relevant rules and the dispute that relevant to the internal mood problems here. So the fact is like One Picha gave a notice of denunciation of the treaty on 4 July. And 1 year after the denunciation is 4 July 2022. And Anthony at the same time filed a claim on 3 July 2022. And we can see that the relevant rules will state that the present treaty shall remain in force, but may be denounced upon 1 year's notice at the end of which period, and so on. Denunciation shall be addressed to the Pan American Union and so on. So I mean, if you look further, it will be just only like the conflict is on about the 1 year after denunciation of whether or not the relevant rules still apply and the treaty shall remain in force, because the denunciation have to made in 1 year prior before it ceases to be in effect. We can see that this issue, I mean, I give you some of the example here as the supporting case in like paragraph 29 and 40 of this decision. Technically, it's like about if One Picha denounced and A filed the case before 1 year after denunciation, what it will be look like in the case. And like in this case, the court rules. I mean, if we compare to the case, like for the One Picha objection to be dismissed and so on. Anyway, because I state for only one side in favor of the claim of the applicant. So it's also have another argument, another way to argue for the respondent as well. So we can see that applicant's argument is according to Pichimi. Pichimi is the one who do this real program last year. So it will be like One Picha was a former member of the Pact of Bogota signed on this day, and under this article of the treaty, the party recognized the jurisdiction and so on. And under the article that I already have cited to you, this will be like the treaty shall remain in force indefinitely unless it's denounced upon 1 year notice. And likewise, One Picha gave a notice for denunciation on 4 July, which means the Pact of Bogota ceased to be in force on 3 July 2022. And therefore, the court shall have jurisdiction over the dispute and so on. Here is like the Pact of Bogota is not yet ceased to be in force, and therefore we can file the claim. But obviously, this is too long to be in oral pleading. So let's look on how you will write a script for these kind of things. When pleading, this is like possible pleading. You can just make, as I mentioned, the structure, the first conclusion, then the analysis, and then the second conclusion. And it's like you may bring judge attention by calling the judge Your Excellencies, or may I draw your attention to which paragraph of the agreed fact. And in this case, it can simply be like, Your Excellencies, the court has jurisdiction over the dispute. According to the agreed fact, an attorney filed claim on 3 July 2022, which is before the Pact of Bogota ceased to be in force. And therefore, this court has jurisdiction. Kind of that. Or you may see in the blue highlight text, it is about the case that I have mentioned. So the role of the case may be the supporting reason in your main pleading. Or you can keep it, and when the judge asks question whether you have authority or not, and you can simply cite the case and briefly mention about the details and so on. So it's optional whether to put it or not. And after that, it is about the questions. As I have mentioned, that the judge always has the questions. So let's move to the next slide. According to my experience in mooting, we have 3 types of questions that will be addressed by the judge. The first question is about the questions on your legal knowledge. This have questions who test your knowledge of the provision or the cases cited by your team. The judge may also ask you about the relevant law as well, or ask you to provide authority, like whether you have a case or whether you have like any opinions of the expert to back up. But mostly it will be about the case when we talk about authority. And when answering or pleading, you should not distort the law or the case to favor your argument, but you have to find a reason to favor your side why the law resulted in favor of your side. Even the case did not result in your side, you have to point out, oh, all right, even the case was decided like this. But in this case, the fact is slightly different and all the criteria may not be applicable and so on. Next is about the question about the fact. This question will not test you about the law. do not answer the law of the case, but the judge will question you on the understanding of the fact. You should not distort the fact or invent new fact. That is too far. It's something that cannot be assumed or cannot be presumed or conclude easily, but simply invent the whole new fact to favor your side. You can perish the fact for certain extent, like interpret them in favor of your side, because more problems are always unclear. Otherwise, there's no room for interpretation, and one side will be in favor of the others. So mostly it will be about like the fact, the details about the dispute that you can interpret for both sides, but do not distort the fact that is already clear, or do not invent new fact, because the judge will catch you, and then now it's a game. The last one is the question to destroy your stance. This type of question is its nature is like totally different from the first two. The first question will test you on the legal knowledge. Second question will test you on the fact. The third question normally will test you on the fact as well, but it's not mainly the understanding of the fact, but it will be on your interpretation. Of course, that if you are applicant or respondent, you interpret certain fact, and normally the judge will ask the question that, oh, is it okay? Is it right? Is it also correct to interpret it like this? Which normally may be the fact that is not in your favor, or even it is the fact that the defendant or the respondent ought to mention if you are the applicant. And because this is the question from the judge, normally people will off guard and think that this will not harm you as much as it's come out from the defendant's mouth. But in fact, it is equivalently harmful, or in fact more harmful than that. So all the things you have to do in this kind of question, if the interpretation that the judge have mentioned, whether or not this can be interpreted in this way or that way, is not in your position, is to insist your position. Like, no, Your Excellencies, the fact have to interpret in this way. Why? Or even if it is possible, if you cannot argue on this way, you may argue that, yes, Your Excellency, what Your Excellencies mentioned about the interpretation is right, but only for certain case, but this case is different. It can only be interpreted in my way. And one tip, keep smiling when you receive the questions, because question is always your friends. Questions can destroy you, but at the same time, if you can address judge question well, you gain the score. And sometimes if judge interest in your argument, they will ask a lot of questions, and there is more room for you to convince the judge. Another tip in answering question, if you cannot answer, do not say directly like, I don't know the answer, I'm so sorry. But like, you can just paraphrase it into more professional way of saying, I don't know. Like, my apologies that I may not assist your Excellency question right now, but please allow me further submission. Technically, this means you don't know, but it's better than you don't know. It's just like, I don't know right now, but of course, if you give me a time, I can give the answer. So please allow me to further submit it. And of course, your point will be deducted, but not as much as when you say directly like, I don't know. So next part is about the rebuttal and surrebuttal. Rebuttal and surrebuttal is the final part of pleading, where if you are the applicant, after the respondent finish their oral pleading, you will be able to rebut the argument that the respondent has mentioned. And at the same time, if you are the respondent, you'll be able to rebut what the applicant have mentioned in their rebuttal session. So the rule simply is like, in rebuttal, the claimant or the applicant was only allowed to argue against what the respondent have pleaded. You are not allowed to plead the unfinished part, and in the rebuttal, the same rules apply, that the respondent can only argue against the claimant's or the applicant's rebuttal. However, you may create a situation, you may do so, if your unfinished part can be an argument to the opponent's statement. You may plead it shortly in rebuttal and surrebuttal as an rebuttal or surrebuttal argument instead. Or if the respondent has argued and your unfinished part has some connection with the argument you made, like the respondent argue on certain respondent argument, your rebuttal agreement is not directly the unfinished part, but it can lead to the further issue, which is the unfinished part. Then you can just simply say like, yeah, the respondent argued that, and state the respondent argument, but in fact, and then state your rebuttal argument. And this leads us to the further issue that, and then state your unfinished part shortly as a part of rebuttal or surrebuttal. Exactly, this is not cheating, but just a technique in pleading. So you can do so. And here, when it comes to rebuttal or rebuttal technique, there are three main points that you have to deal with during rebuttal or rebuttal session. The first part is if your opposition did not argue some of your essential argument, you can simply say like the applicant or the respondent did not argue on this issue or that issue. And therefore, by not arguing, it means they already accept it. So no need to further elaborate or no need to further state your argument in this session. This will cut a lot of time for you and at the same time will destroy their credit because like it's deemed that they already accept of what you have mentioned, which very favor you. And if they want to argue for that, they have to waste a lot of time when it comes to their rebuttal or rebuttal. And then if your opposition have provides improper analysis on facts, laws, or authority, and you know that, for example, like they have addressed the cases to support their argument partly, but in fact, if you read the full case, you will see that in fact it's favor your side. You can just simply mention like, if the applicant or the respondent address the decision further, the applicant or respondent would find that and what exactly is the decision that is not in their favor. This will destroy their credit a lot and at the same time will raise your score of the understanding of law. And the last part is if your opposition provides contradictory argument, this will be a little bit difficult to detect because it has to be improvised. It's like you have to listen clearly and thoroughly to the argument that they state at the time, and then see that whether there's contradiction or not. I will show you example at the end. But here, like you can simply mention like the applicants or respondent argument contradict themselves. It may be if it come from the different counsel, the separate counsel, you may mention like the first counsel has claimed that and then state that first argument. And then the second counsel argue that another one, which is in contradiction of their own argument. And this will help you a lot in doing rebuttal and rebuttal. And at the same time, this will cut out their time a lot. If they want to gain their credit back, they have to explain a lot. And because rebuttal and rebuttal have quite a restriction in time limit, if they choose to uphold their credit, then they will lose some of the period of time that they have to raise the argument or their rebuttal or rebuttal on the author's part. And then we move to the next slide. So this slide is about how to point out the contradiction in the argument. So actually, if we are in person, it will give you quite a brief of time to think of what is the contradiction in this argument. But like here, it's like you in personal normally will have the identical uniform. It's like when you look, you know that this is UN personal. And they are protected from being attacked under international law. The scenario is that the defendant shot the UN personal from a far distance. And the defense raised by the defendant, the argument is that he commits self-defense since there was a pistol in the UN personal hand and that he could not see the uniform. So he had no intention to shoot UN personal because he don't know that that is protected person. So as a prosecutor, do you see any problem in the defendant's argument? So normally I will give you quite a period of time, but because this is online video, I will just point out easily that here, the defendant argued that he commits self-defense because there was a pistol in the UN personal hand. But at the same time, he said that I cannot see the uniform of the UN personnel, so I don't know that it's UN personnel. The contradiction is just that the pistol is very small object compared to the uniform of the UN personnel. If you cannot see the pistol, of course, you may or may not see the uniform. And yeah, that is fair if you cannot identify whether or not that is UN personnel. But in this case, you can see the pistol in the hand clearly. But how in the world can you not see the uniform, which is identical, that the victim itself is the protected person? This kind of argument was raised in as a claimant, as the prosecutor, we can simply mention like, oh, here, the defendant argument contradict themselves because of the defendant claim they can see the pistol, which is a very small object compared to the identical uniform of the protected person. But at the same time, they cannot identify the larger object, which is the uniform of UN personnel. And if we believe the defendant that the defendant can see the pistol in the UN personnel hand, it can totally lead to the conclusion that the defendant can clearly see the uniform as well, which constitute the intention to shoot the protected person of that. And of course, this is the real argument that my team had faced during the IHL national round. So it's just like you have to be able to catch the contradiction of two arguments of the respondent or the applicant clearly and just mention it out in the rebuttal and say rebuttal. So this will be end of my session here.